Why did a single city's protest force a nation to rewrite its housing laws? In the next minutes you'll see how Chicago streets became a battlefield for economic power, and witness the night Dr. King stood before a sea of angry residents as police batons glinted in the dark. A black family stands on a cramped south side balcony, the wind rattling cracked windows, while a white neighbor watches from across the street, his gaze a silent accusation. This daily standoff was the invisible spark that would later ignite a citywide revolt. In 1965, that quiet tension erupted into a movement that would reshape America's laws. The Great Migration had swelled Chicago's black population from 40,000 in 1910 to over 800,000 by 1960, filling the South Side with families seeking jobs and freedom from Jim Crow. Yet the city's real estate board erected restrictive covenants, legally barring black families from white neighborhoods, turning the promise of the North into a new form of segregation. World War I and II had opened industrial doors, but the post-war boom turned those doors into walls. White residents, fearing property devaluation, violently opposed the Chicago Housing Authority's attempts to place public housing in integrated neighborhoods, prompting the city to concentrate high-rise projects within black districts, cementing a cycle of poverty. Civil rights victories in the South, Brown versus Board, Montgomery, Birmingham, were celebrated nationwide, yet Northern activists felt the spotlight ignored their own battles. In 1962, a young University of Chicago student named Bernie Sanders, not the future senator, organized a 15-day sit-in to challenge off-campus segregation, planting the first seed of organized resistance in the city. The following year, a citywide boycott of Chicago public schools erupted when Superintendent Benjamin Willis deployed mobile classrooms on playgrounds, a blatant attempt to keep black children out of integrated schools. The boycott drew tens of thousands, yet the city's response was a hollow promise of investigation, fueling deeper frustration. When the Watts riots exploded in Los Angeles in August 1965, national attention turned to urban unrest. King saw a parallel: violence was a symptom of systemic denial, not a cause. He convened with James Bevel and Al Raby, deciding Chicago would become the next front in the nonviolent struggle for open housing. The Coordinating Council of Community Organizations, CCCO, a coalition of black churches, labor unions, and civic groups, rallied behind the SCLC. Their first public demand was simple yet radical: an end to discriminatory housing practices, equal schools, fair jobs, and a voice for black consumers in the marketplace. On August 26, 1965, King arrived in Chicago, greeted by a sea of black and white faces at the Grant Park rally. The crowd's roar eclipsed the city's skyline, a sound that signaled the first major crack in the status quo. King's speech was a thunderclap. He warned that the battle for civil rights is not a Southern problem, it is an American problem. The promise of a march into the white North sent shockwaves through City Hall, prompting the mayor to convene a crisis committee. The first march began on September 7, 1965, with 3,000 activists marching from the South Side to the affluent Gold Coast. Police lined the streets, batons gleaming, but the marchers held their ground, chanting, "We want open housing." The city's response, tear gas and arrests, only amplified national media coverage. Amid the protests, a quieter revolution was brewing: Operation Breadbasket. Led by a young Jesse Jackson, the program organized black shoppers to boycott businesses that refused to hire African American workers, turning dollars into a weapon of moral persuasion. Breadbasket's first target was a major grocery chain that employed no black clerks. Within weeks, black shoppers flooded the aisles, refusing to buy until the chain pledged to hire. The company capitulated, marking the first economic victory of the movement. The success sparked a cascade. Local businesses, from laundries to car dealerships, faced similar boycotts. Each one forced the city's white business elite to confront a new reality: economic power could no longer be ignored. Meanwhile, the mayor's crisis committee, led by Mayor Richard J. Daley, attempted a political counteroffensive. They offered a token open housing ordinance that applied only to a handful of public housing units, hoping to placate the protesters without changing the system. King and Bevel saw through the facade. On October 13, they led a massive open housing march that culminated at the mayor's office, where they were met not with dialogue but with a line of police batons. The confrontation was captured on national television, the image of King's face framed by flashing lights becoming an indelible symbol of Northern resistance. The backlash forced the movement to pivot. Instead of a single legislative win, they broadened their demands: better schools, fair employment, and health services. This expansion turned the freedom movement into a comprehensive social justice campaign, a strategy unheard of in Southern campaigns that focused narrowly on voting rights. In January 1966, the movement staged a Freedom Summer of its own, organizing a series of open housing sit-ins inside white neighborhoods. Black families entered vacant homes, only to be met by angry mobs and police. The violence was broadcast across the nation, exposing the North's hidden racism. The turning point arrived on March 28, 1966, when a coalition of black ministers, labor leaders, and white allies signed the Chicago Open Housing Agreement, committing to desegregate 5,000 housing units over 2 years. It was the first time the city formally pledged to dismantle covenants, yet the agreement lacked enforcement mechanisms. King, sensing the movement's momentum slipping, delivered his final Chicago speech on June 26, 1966, at the University of Chicago. He warned that the battle is not over until the doors of every home are open, a prophetic line that would echo in the halls of Congress 2 years later. The movement's economic tactics paid off. By August 1966, Operation Breadbasket had secured over 30,000 jobs for black workers, a tangible victory that proved consumer power could force systemic change. Yet the city's white establishment remained reluctant to fully integrate, prompting activists to take their fight to Washington. In 1968, Congress passed the Fair Housing Act, outlawing discrimination based on race, religion, or national origin. Lawmakers cited the Chicago Freedom Movement as a primary catalyst, acknowledging that the city's protests had turned public opinion and forced federal action. The legacy of Chicago's struggle lives on in today's battles over gentrification, zoning, and affordable housing. The movement taught that when a community controls its economic power, it can rewrite the rules of the city. As modern activists echo the chants of 1965, the question remains: will the next generation wield that power wisely? From cramped balconies to a national law, Chicago's freedom movement proved that economic leverage can be as mighty as a march. Its story reminds us that the fight for fair housing is unfinished, and that every dollar we spend can be a vote for justice. If you want more deep dives into history's turning points, hit subscribe and join us as we forge the past into tomorrow's lessons.